Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I apologize for the technical difficulties that we had earlier, but I'm so happy that you guys are ready and had patience and ready to start this great webinar. So, like I said, I'm Camille Moore with Connect, and I'd like to thank you for tuning into RFP Doesn't Have to Stand for Really Frustrating Process with Gary Hernbroth and panelists Justin Clark and Tracy Berkey. Before we get started, there are just a few housekeeping notes on the platform. You can type in your questions for Gary in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen or via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'd love for this to be an interactive session, so please send in questions throughout the webinar. A recorded session of this version will be on demand on our website, where you can find additional on-demand webinars for any of you needing last-minute credit hours before CMP testing. Yes, you are able to watch our sessions on demand and still receive credit. For everyone joining us live today, the credit was approved for 1 credit hour towards CMP IS Domain B project management. We will send your certificate tomorrow evening. For any of you future viewers watching this session on demand and not live, please email me directly at cmoore@connectmeetings.com to receive your certificate. I'll share more information about our upcoming webinars at the end of the program, but let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to thank Cambria Hotels for sponsoring today's session. They have provided a video of their brand to share with us. Wow, how great does Cambria Hotels look? Thank you again, Cambria Hotels. Before I introduce the speakers, you'll notice a map on your screen about the upcoming events for 2019 with Connect. If you have any questions about our upcoming shows or about Connect 2019 in Louisville, please contact my coworker, Mark Wong, Senior Director of Sales at mwong@connectmeetings.com, and I will type in his email address for everyone. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers, Gary Hernbroth, Tracy Berkey, and Justin Clark. Gary Hernbroth founded Training for Winners in 1995 after 18 years in the hospitality and meetings business in sales, marketing, and operations management. Tracy Berkey, CDME, has over 20 years experience in the meetings industry and is currently beginning to build her own business in Syracuse as a representative of Helms Briscoe, a hotel sourcing company based in Scottsdale, Arizona. She helps companies and organizations to research venues worldwide, negotiate rates, and review contracts at no cost to her clients. And Justin Clark is a Colorado native and Director of Sales for Visit Aurora, the official destination marketing organization for the city of Aurora. Gary, welcome, and thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you, Camille, and welcome to Tracy and Justin, and just as importantly, welcome to all of our listeners and engaged folks out there across the land. I am really happy to be with you guys today, and hopefully in the next hour we will bring a lot of value to your lives and your careers, because I think we've got a topic here, folks, that really hits a lot of the high points in frustration. Would you agree?
Definitely.
I mean, the really frustrating process just came to me after a session I did about a year ago, when it was full of suppliers and buyers in the room, and we talked about a number of things, and I can tell you the number one, what I call barbed wire issue that everybody seemed to get tangled up on was the RFPs. And while not every RFP process is tangled, there certainly are some smooth examples of RFPs, working as a process. It really seemed to hit with the crowd that, wow, it can be so much better. And the thing about it is, we created the process, right? I mean, our own industry came up with this process. in terms of how we do it. And it's really something that I think if we built it, why can't we fix it? And that's the premise that we're going to go with today, folks, is that it's going to take everybody working and maybe move this thing along an inch at a time until we finally get it to where we can have a less tangled up RFP process. Does that sound interesting to everybody?
Absolutely.
It does.
Okay, good. So again, I want to officially thank on my welcome slide there, Tracy and Justin, for giving your time and expertise in speaking to the various things we're going to speak to. And I wanted to start out, Camille, if we can go to the slide with from RFP.com. I want to give it a little bit of a context that this is not just an issue in the meetings and hospitality industry. This is a quote that I found on RFP365.com. And, of course, we all know that a lot of industries work on the RFP process, too. Request for proposal is fairly common. You go to any trade show across America, and you've probably got people on the floor there doing RFPs left and right. But I don't think we own the problem. I mean, there are other industries that have issues with this, but it's just certainly our problem, so we need to fix it. But just take a look at this quote here. And it really hit home because I've heard people say the same thing, that it seems like they're reinventing the wheel a lot. And it becomes counterproductive and, can really lead to a poor usage of time. Justin and Tracy, if you would like to jump in and react to this quote in terms of how much time that your salespeople and the salespeople you deal with seem to be spending on the RFP process.
Definitely can take up a great deal of time. Sometimes the RFPs are not complete, or there's not necessarily enough information there from a bureau perspective to get it to our hotels yet. So oftentimes there is a bit of a delay as we try to establish contact with the planner and then work through that process and get a few questions answered so that we can be helpful and add value to that process.
Tracy?
Yes, and I think I have the unique perspective. I was with a CVB for many years and flipped over to the meeting side. And, I see both sides of it. And I think the one thing I will say probably in every slide that we talk about today is I think you need to understand and partner with the other side. For example, as a CVB, you need to understand the planner's perspective and the need that they have. It's not the bells and whistles, it's the basic information. From the planner side, understanding that you're asking your hospitality industry partner to give you information, you need to be conscientious on providing as much as possible. And I think one of the biggest challenges, I know from the CVB side, was getting history on events. And I think the responsibility needs to be on both sides, to really work together to get as much detail. And it does take time, and it does take communication, and that probably moves on to the point of let's take a look at the time frame that you're giving. As a planner, am I trying to rush this? Is it necessary? Or can we have a little extra time to do it right? So I think it's really taking a look at both sides and understanding what each other is thinking.
Well, it does, and we're going to take this process and kind of break it down in those elements, Tracy, and you're so right about it. As I said, it doesn't always have to be a tangled mess, but the more stories I hear, it seems more like, I kind of liken it to somebody hitting the trail and trying to go uphill to get the sale, and in the middle of the trail, they come upon this 800-pound gorilla. And you can't avoid the gorilla because he's standing in your trail, and then your trail is the only way up that mountain. You're going to have to deal with it. So you either eliminate the gorilla or tame the gorilla or get him to like you or something before you can be successful, because it's not going to go away. I mean, RFP for both buyers and sellers, as our audience well knows, is a very big fundamental blocking and tackling kind of thing for their job. I mean, you can't avoid it. I know people try to get out of things like doing site inspections once in a while, or they get out of going on sales trips in bad weather and things like that, and you can kind of try to get away from those things. But you can't get away from RFPs. It's part of your job. So we're going to help folks deal with that a little bit better. And I'm going to go to the next slide, Camille. And I want to start off with a premise and also a quiz. My premise is that we need each other in order to be successful. And I'm going to ask my panelists today a true or false question. You guys better not fail me here. True or false? The more we tell each other or the more we share with each other, the easier this will go.
True.
Absolutely true.
Well, there you go. You both passed, and now you're qualified panelists. And it seems so simple, doesn't it, guys? I mean, the more we tell each other and the more we share with each other, the easier this will go. And yet that seems to be one of the things that we have to overcome in this process. Camille, I'm going to go to the next slide, and it's the young lady climbing up the side of a mountain there. I'll wait till you guys all get queued up on that. So the next two slides I'm going to share with you are key seller considerations and key buyer considerations. And these are kind of a compilation of things that I have done in my training workshops and also interviewing both sides and on planner panels and things like that, where we've had a forum where the sides can talk to each other, or sometimes they'll just talk to me in private. So I kind of boiled down the top ones for this seminar. I mean, we could make this a 10-hour session if we wanted, but we don't have that time. So I've kind of boiled down the top ones here. And the key seller considerations seem to be, I think they need to consider about the spray and pray method. You don't have to, you can't, not everybody can be your business, right? And everybody isn't your client. So going after all the RFPs can really bog you down. So there's probably some thought process that needs to go with that. I do know some hotels that practice a scattergun approach, and they really get bogged down going after business that they're really not going to get. The second one is, how do I scale the wall to stand out from my competition? So this is where I kind of want to get into the mind of the buyer, or through the eyes of the buyer, in terms of, okay, you send out an RFP, you're going to get multiple responses usually. How do I scale that wall like the young lady's trying to do there and stand out from the competition? I may have some particular competitive selling advantages. How do I make best use of that or those? Third one is getting the details right. As a hotel or a destination or facility salespeople, and I hope we have all of those types on with us today, but I'll speak to all of those. You've got to get the details right. So it should be a concern and a priority of yours to get those details right, because that could be the tipping point between you make the cut or you don't make the cut. Less and less planners today have the time to go back and double-check work and say, oh, are you sure about this? So if you don't get those details right, and you guys can tell me if I'm right or wrong here, you may not get a chance to get to second base.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay?
No,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, no, that's very true. And Aurora, we have 65 hotel partners, and when we have an RFP that's being sourced widely, that's definitely a part of the process that we try to help our hotels with, is making sure they address the planner needs and put together their best and most competitive proposal from the start, because planners are so often so busy now that unless you make that initial cut, you're really not going to have a chance to have that conversation with the planner again, to have a second try at it.
Right. So you better give your best foot forward, right?
Yes.
And the fourth point kind of wraps up all four of them in the way that, the job of a salesperson, intrinsic to their job description, if you will, is being persuasive and compelling. So one thing that we'll talk about in this program is, how do I jump off the spreadsheet? How can I be persuasive and compelling when everyone else is filling in the same boxes I'm filling in? Because that is the job of a salesperson, is to be persuasive and compelling and give a good reason or reasons why a customer would want to come and buy from us. So while we're on the consideration slide, let's go to the next one, and let's flip it and look at the other side of the mirror here. And I'm going to share with you and go into key buyer considerations. I'll draw your attention to that little box on the right that I use as a visual, because I think we can wrap all of this up by saying, simplify my life, please, right? If you're a planner, you just want someone to help you connect the dots. You don't want your job to be any tougher than it already is. You want the salespeople and the representatives of your facilities and destinations to simplify your life. Well, how do they simplify your life? By giving you what you need when you need it. So some of the considerations that I think the sellers need to consider through the buyer's eyes here are, I have to make the right choice for my event. Okay, I can't choose the wrong. I can't make the wrong choice for my event. It could be a disaster. I could lose my job. There could be repercussions far beyond what you might think. But I have to make the right choice for my event. So the RFP's got to be strong. I have viable choices to consider, and I'm trying to consider and get that down to a manageable number. The third one is I ask for details. I need the answers back. I need the details back that I need. I think one of the complaints that I've heard from buyers is they ask for A, B, and C. They get not only A, B, and C, but an entire alphabet, or they'll get X, Y, R, T, and N, and C, but A and B are missing. And I don't know if the two of you have ever heard that go on, but I've heard that, at least meet my minimum with what I need. And you can add other stuff, down the line, but at least give me what I need. Don't leave those out in the initial go-around. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. I love the little checklist on the right, and I think that really summarizes what we all should be thinking of because, I kind of think of this as a triangle, and there's the planner and the supplier, but really the top of the triangle is the customer, and we all have a responsibility to simplify this process because what we're all trying to do is make our customer happy. The customer in the supplier instance is the meeting planner and the attendees, and in the planner has to, their bottom line is to make their attendees happy.
Great point.
So we don't need a lot of bells and whistles at this point. We need to, fill out our checklist and check everything off that we need. And I know from my CVB experience, I always was very adamant that we put to our hotel partners the hot buttons of our client. And I
absolutely
think
important.
That on my meeting planning side now with my customer is, what are maybe the top 2 or 3 deciding factors that are the most important, and that's what I really want that proposal. If I get nothing else out of it, I don't need to know that you have an airport and that you have a convention center and you have hotels because everybody has that. So, maybe rates are a consideration for me, maybe shuttling is a consideration, but if I can list my top 3 priorities and you can address those, then we're already ahead of the game.
And Tracy, those are great points, and they're very customer focused. And it shouldn't be really that hard to do for a supplier to put that information together. I mean, it may take time, but it shouldn't be too difficult. With the sources that are available, especially if you're working with the CVB.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And none of this matters, guys. None of this matters on this page if we can't meet the time deadline, right? I mean, who's got who's got enough time in their life today? I don't know if anyone from our audience would like to put their hand up there, but it seems like none of us have enough time to do the things we really want to do. And the last thing we need is to have an albatross around our neck. I've heard stories from planners saying, I really wanted to hear from a couple of the hotels because, we had a program there many years ago, or they had something interesting or compelling to somebody on my management team, and are we going to get a proposal from them? And they never responded, or they responded late, and it was after everybody else came in with it. So none of this matters if we can't meet time deadlines. And maybe one of you can address a story on Justin or Tracy. Did your destination ever lose a bid because it didn't make a time deadline, waiting for responses from your community?
No, this is Justin. I think that does happen sometimes. And as you had mentioned earlier, I mean, some planners have RFPs that do have a legitimately very short turnaround period. and understanding that timeline and understanding the key factors that planner needs can really help expedite that process. But no, I know that we've had opportunities come up that that we've worked for our hotels to try and get responses together, and we may have missed some of those opportunities just because we weren't able to get enough proposals or answer all the questions in time. So that definitely is a challenge sometimes.
And hold that thought, because we're going to come back to that in the communication slide there. Camille, can we move to the next slide? This is what I put together after the last few seminars I've done where RFPs have been the main focus, and a large part of this came from a session I did at IMEX last year in Las Vegas. And this is really kind of supplier-oriented questions going to the event professionals and planners and third parties. And I think these are legitimate questions that really kind of cause a little bit of anxiety in the heart of suppliers, because they don't really know. Sometimes they send out an RFP and they don't know where it's going in the wind. Sometimes it goes into the black hole and never comes back. But I send this thing out, and is it just blowing in the wind? And I think these are legitimate concerns. The first one is, you can see, can I reach you if I need clarification? I'll go through these four, and then I'll ask you, Tracy and Justin, to kind of discuss the one, if you have any hot points about these. But can I reach you if I need clarification? Because let's be frank, two people can read the same piece of paper or read the same email and take two different things from it. So maybe something's not clear. Maybe the person asking for the RFP has not been 100% clear in their ask. So that does come up. Doesn't make anybody a dummy. It just means that this isn't very clear. Are there any deal breakers? Tracy, you alluded to that a little bit about the hot points, but the mirror side of a hot point is, are there anything that's a deal breaker? So, you can't have this, or you can't be too far away from the airport for this, or you can't have, whatever. So there's deal makers and deal breakers. Will you tell me those? Because that might eliminate us right off the bat, and maybe we're not even in the RFP process, and so we'd both be wasting our time. The third one is where is there some wiggle room? Is there any wiggle room? Now, that's kind of a negotiation tactic, but Justin, as you already mentioned too, people don't have the time to play poker like they used to. So, do you put that wiggle room in there in the initial part and we kind of address it, or are we going to kind of play a cat and mouse kind of a thing later on? How do I know there's going to be a later on? So I want to know, is there some wiggle room here? Or is it an arbitrary thing where it's kind of black and white? I'd like to know if there's some gray. And then the last one is your list of asks. Let's kind of, and I did this when I was in hotel sales all the time. It's like the Christmas wish list. Which things would you like to have, and which things do you have to have? And I found that when I asked my customers to kind of divide the lists up, boy, did that process go a lot smoother. And we are talking about smoothing a process out in this webinar. So if you want to smooth the process out, I think that the side that's asking has got to disseminate, what is there a weight assigned to some of my requests? I mean, yeah, these are the most important ones. These are kind of the nice to haves. And the third pile are, gee, it'd be great if we could get them, but I don't think we're going to get them. But, what list can I work off of here? So those are the have-to-haves versus the kind of sort of, would like to have. And I just found that made my negotiations go that much quicker. And I think that that's still the case today. So would you guys like to add anything to these kinds of things that go through the seller's mind, that the buyer is going to want to answer for him?
Yeah, this is Justin. I definitely think it applies to both sides of the equation, whether you're a buyer or a seller. Kind of that, and the last 3 points that you detailed, Gary, I think kind of relate to that, is just that idea of, is there any flexibility? Are there any things that you absolutely have to have or you can't have? Because as we know, planners are very busy, have a lot on their plate, and a lot of our supplier hotels and bureaus are also very busy and have a lot on their plate. So if there is any flexibility in the dates, the pattern, the space requirements, all that information is incredibly helpful to have on the front end, because oftentimes a hotel supplier is, as is a CVB, very thankful to have the opportunity, and we want your business. And sometimes those are the topic of conversation, between a bureau and a hotel, or a hotel and a planner, is, hey, we really want this piece of business. It's a great opportunity. We think it's a great fit, but we can't quite fit the pattern, or are they open to other dates? And if we have that on the front end, that can really make the process work a lot more smoothly.
Well, exactly. One of the paradigms of sales is it's not always what you book, it's what you move, right?
Mm-hmm.
The dates. I had one situation come up where a planner put an RFP out and said, this is one of those meetings where it's a quick in and out. It's got to absolutely be at an airport property, okay? And she told me she heard from resorts that were 30 miles away. And she said, these are beautiful resorts. There's nothing wrong with them. And if it had been a different kind of meeting, or a higher level meeting, or a sales rally or something where I could take them to a resort, I absolutely would have. But she said they cluttered up my inbox because they were going after this, and I was very, very specific. And this gets back to, okay, are you reading the RFP? Are you cognizant of what they're saying? Is this meeting, and for this meeting particularly, we have to have an airport property because we are in and out. And this kind of gets back to my point too about hotels chasing every RFP that comes by. They feel they want to chase because, well, it's an RFP, it's business, it's potential. But there could be a deal breaker there that, well, I could take another meeting there. And I want to admonish the salespeople who are listening to have the wherewithal to say, okay, we're not in the game on this one because we're not at the airport, but we've got a beautiful property. Do you do other meetings? So if you'll consider us for other meetings, we'll have something down the road, and I can plant that seed because, today's apple seed might be tomorrow's apple tree. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to be in this one because I'm not an airport property.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I would also jump in with, I'm looking at the 4 bullet points here, and really, if you take number 2 and number 4, are there any deal breakers? That goes back to the hot buttons that I was referencing earlier, and that's really up to the planner to make sure that's clearly outlined in the RFP so that the supplier can then clearly respond to that. And then, if you've got a list of what I have to have, there's your hot buttons. And what I want to have, maybe on the want to have, there's some wiggle room in that. But the more you can spell out from the beginning, the less there's going to be a need for clarification, which makes everybody's life easier.
Yes. Well, it draws me back again as a review in our quiz class. The test that you've so wonderfully passed in the beginning of the show here was, the more we tell each other or share with each other, the easier this will go. And I think we're going to continue to maybe beat that drum a little bit because that really is the magic sauce here, isn't it? Now, Camille, please let us know if people are asking questions or they'd like to jump in. I want to encourage everybody who's listening today to jump in with a question or make a point, and we will do our best to address your question. Or if you've got a short little anecdote to share with us, we would be more than glad to hear it and react to it. So please don't be shy and get involved as much as you'd like.
We do have one question.
Okay.
Someone wants to know, what do you see as a reasonable, with quotes around that, time to ask for a response to an RFP?
Okay. Now, is this coming from a seller or a buyer?
It doesn't say. Someone just wants
well, we can address both. That's a big question because there's a lot of what ifs about that. But I think we'll each try to answer it in our own way. Can you repeat it one more time, please, Camille?
Yes. What do you see as a reasonable time to ask for a response to an RFP? And she's a buyer.
Oh, she's a buyer. Okay. First of all, thank you for your question. I'm going to say this is a one-size-fits-no-one kind of industry, so there's not going to be one answer that everyone's going to go by. But I think one of the criteria, and you guys tell me if I'm down the right path here, is the lead time of the event itself is going to play a big role in that. And I would say the sooner the better so you can assemble your RFPs together and start making your cuts and your choices, and maybe winnow it down to a couple of finalists or something. But I think a lot of that reasonable time has to do with how far out your event is.
I would agree with that. However, it's kind of a fine line, and in my mind, and I did this from the CVB side, and I now do it from the planner side.
Sure.
I want to give enough time realistically, and there are times where you can't. There's, somebody needs something immediately. That's the nature of it. But when you can, it's nice to give enough time, but I'm always afraid if I give too much time, it's going to fall to the bottom of the pile, and it's going to cause more work on the other end because you've got to follow up with everybody because you weren't their priority and now they've forgotten. So in a lot of cases, I try to give no more than a week, maybe 10 days, so that it doesn't disappear on their list.
Okay.
I would agree, and I think it in part depends on where that program is in the process. Because I know sometimes we'll receive RFPs that maybe it's for a program that's in 2025, but it has a 2-day turnaround, and getting a really, especially if it's a complex program that has a lot of needs and requirements, it can be hard to really do that justice in that amount of time. But I also know sometimes in the process, the planner might just be seeking, I just need to know if your destination's available and approximately, some very basic information, what hotels are available, what kind of rates are they quoting, what's the ballpark, and if that's clearly outlined, then we can definitely respond to that very quickly, and the hotels can, if they understand where they are in the process and they know, we don't have to put together a complete proposal addressing every meal and every breakfast. We just need to supply availability and some information that way. They can do it really quickly. So I think giving enough time, and I would agree that ideally that 5 to 10 days is probably the sweet spot, I would say.
Well, when you're dealing with a destination, as you guys were, there's a lot of moving parts to that. I mean, you've got to, you may have to deal with, get some information from DMCs if they want to take an event off property, if they want to find out, can I book the football stadium, for our closing event? No one's going to get back to you in 10 minutes on that, right? What can I, is there something special I can set up at the airport? Can we block off a street? Can you contact the city for me? These are all things that I've known have come up. Either I've done them myself or my clients have mentioned them. But we want to have a special parade. So can your city block off a street so we can have a parade and give us, have the police block off the blocks around the hotels? We can do that. I mean, that's not a 10-minute question. So you do need that time. Although I'm going to guess that there are legions of salespeople on this webinar that also deal with the quick turnaround, maybe corporate meetings where they do have to know the very next day, or if not that afternoon. That can be tough.
I was going to say also, Gary, that it does depend on when you're sending the RFP. Is it a hotel only where we just need a block of rooms?
Right.
Or, does it involve meetings and perhaps some destination information as well? Obviously, you need more time. But I think that can go back then to the hot buttons in or I shouldn't say the hot buttons, but the information the planner provides in their original RFP to make sure that you've got the decision process included in there, because there are times where a group's booking for 2021 or 22,
right,
and they've got a board meeting coming up, and they've got to have a preliminary list for their board of directors or their site selection committee. So sometimes the decision process will drive how fast the turnaround is.
And that's back to my original point, Tracy, on it depends on when your event's going to be, because I think sometimes you have to plan backwards like you just suggested. I've got to have choices to take to the board retreat so they can review my choices, and then they'll give me the top 3 that they want me to pursue, and then I'll go back to the top 3. And So you almost have to work that backwards and say, okay, here's, it's kind of like doing a renovation to your home. If you say, okay, I've got a house full of relatives coming in for Thanksgiving, and you're talking to a contractor in July, you say, okay, they're coming in Thanksgiving weekend. Your drop-dead date, Mr. Contractor, is November 15th. And we can't be fooling around with it after that because I've got a house full of relatives coming in. And so he would plan his renovation on your drop-dead date. So you kind of work backwards, which is sometimes an easier way to plan. And we're gonna go ahead.
I was going to say, Kimberly made a comment, and she said, as a planner, many times we don't have control in changing the date because we are representing the client.
Right.
I think it would be nice to know for certain locations peak seasons on their website to cut down the back and forth, or that the CVB would know peak season, letting the planner know ahead of time when they get the RFP.
You guys want to handle that one?
Yeah, this is Justin, and no, that's definitely a great idea and a great value add. I mean, whenever we have the opportunity to have communication with a planner before an RFP comes out or immediately when it comes out, I mean, that oftentimes is part of the discussion where we can share some information on maybe like a destination star report, kind of what our patterns are, what our busy periods are, so that we can hopefully help kind of coach the planner on that process and help them, especially if they have any flexibility on dates, getting the best date to get them the best deal for their group.
Justin, can I drill down a bit on that one word you just used in the sentence? Because I know I've spoken on this myself. I can't stress enough that flexibility word that you just used. The more that either side goes in with flexibility to an RFP process, the smoother it's going to be. But I particularly feel that that's true from the planner side. I'm thinking of an RFP that says, our preferred dates are, Monday through Wednesday, the third week of October. But boy, if you add however, if it was advantageous, we could also meet Wednesday through Friday in the last week of September. I mean, right away, that opens up a lot more doors to the hotels, and they actually really love that. When I was in hotel sales, and now when I work with hotel salespeople, to have that Plan B set of dates that I can also look at really makes it nice. Now, should hotel people be asking that question anyway if they don't have those dates available? Yes. Salespeople, in my opinion, don't ask enough about, do you have some date flexibility? But in the RFP process, if you can be flexible with your dates, and not just dates, but your setup, or your move-in, move-out dates, or whatever it is, you will go to the head of the most wanted list for hotels if you have flexibility. Would you agree?
Definitely. I mean, it makes a huge difference if there is any flexibility. It just really helps. As we're talking about this being a team effort, I think it helps everybody in the process. When an RFP hits, a sales office in a hotel, usually one of the first things they're going to do is check for availability. And if they're not available that preferred date, or if there's only one date, that really kind of hits the brakes on that process. But if they know they have some options or there's some potential flexibility there, that salesperson, I think, is much more likely to carry that up their chain of command and try to find solutions to make it work.
Right. Good point. Camille, we're touching on some of these points that lead us into the next slide. So if we could go to the one where my friend is kind of on a safari looking through the binoculars. The remainder of the session here, I want to take the RFP process and break it down into three major components so we can kind of tame our gorilla, if you will, in three particular ways. And the first one is, let's start at the beginning with information gathering. And some of these we've touched on, but the need for clarity from both sides, really. But again, from the buyer side, the clearer you are with your expectations, the better someone can respond to that. Now, it's up to them to read and understand that, but at least you say, hey, I put it out there clearly. They're not reading it, which I do hear more than I probably want to. The details, it's all in the details, right? Details are details are details. And without those, nothing else really is going to move too smoothly. Criteria, Tracy, you touched on criteria. Hot buttons, cold buttons, have to haves, want to haves. Those kinds of things always help in an RFP. And the time sensitivity, which we've alluded to already, but there is a clock ticking on one of two sides. Now, maybe the hotel is the one that has the time sensitivity because they've got other clients wanting those same dates. So I know we always talk about, salespeople like to say, well, I send this out and I don't hear back, and like you said, Justin, it's a 2-day turnaround for a meeting 5 years in advance, and they don't get back to me. But there's also times when the reverse is true, where the hotel's got other clients that want the date. They have the sense of urgency on the time deadline because they can't keep open dates. There's an old saying, when you try to chase 2 rabbits down the hole, sometimes you catch neither one. And so you don't want to have a set of dates go empty because everyone was waiting for everyone else and nobody booked it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you guys address this slide a little bit about the information gathering stage and maybe something you haven't mentioned before in these areas?
Yeah, I would agree. I know from the CVB perspective, we would get very frustrated when we would send a lead out to our hotels, and you could tell they didn't read it, and they just kind of gave us a very canned response, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, reading it is important, and I think the details from the planner perspective in the first place are important. And I'm trying not to jump ahead to your word of communication, but it really all boils down to that when you're
right. We'll get there, but I wanted to touch on something you just said, Tracy, and thank you for bringing it up because it makes my mind go in a bunch of places. And one of those places is credibility, because I know that can be a very sensitive issue, Justin and Tracy, with bureau teams. Because the bureau salesperson is acting sometimes acting at the direction of the planner or the third-party resource, and there's certain things like do not call the client, do not contact the client, must have the proposal by X date, and sometimes the hotels either A, don't play by those rules of engagement, or B, knowingly try to go around those just to try to get the edge, which most of the time ends up blowing up in their face, I think. Mm-hmm. And C, doesn't take into consideration the fact that the credibility of the bureau salesperson is a little bit online, because the planner comes back and says, wait a minute, Tracy, didn't I tell you all that? Didn't I give you these details? Didn't I make it very specific? And now I'm getting all these calls. I didn't want to get these calls, or I'm getting all this information incorrectly that I didn't want to get. I thought we sat down and talked about this. So I think for details, clarity, criteria, there's a lot to be said about the credibility of the bureau person or the destination person being called into question if the hotels don't play by the rules of engagement. Can you address that a little bit?
I think this goes back, Gary, to something I had said in the beginning. I'm listening to you explain all of this, and it's like, we're on sides. It's the hotels, it's the meeting planner, the bureau stuck in the middle, and we're forgetting, going back to the customer, we're not on sides. We're all on the same team, and if we work as a team, we're all going to win with that, making that customer happy and making them a return customer. So
that's what I'm trying to do in bringing these points out, is to say that if we pay attention and do what we're supposed to do, then the sides kind of blur, the lines blur, don't they? And we become partners and not vendors and buyers and all those kind of words. It's more partners to do the thing together. But the details get in the way. Let's go to the next slide, Camille, if we can. This is the communication. This is the one you alluded to, Tracy, but it's here. And we all know communication in all of its forms is one of the most hair-raising things that we deal with as a human race, I think. The lack of communication, the abundance of communication. Sometimes we have too much communication, or the wrong kind of communication, or it's missing information. But we all know, I think, on this call, and anybody who's participating in this, that communication can be the source of a lot of headaches in a lot of areas. and RFPs is one of those areas. So I chose today to get some dialogue going, and again, I want to encourage the audience at home to come in with questions or comments about these things, because communication hits everyone. Communication options, okay, what's the best way, deciding on the method of communication. Not all customers were created alike, nor were all suppliers, so we all have our preferred methods of communication. Do we even take time to ask what that is so that we can communicate the best with each other? And in the case of crickets, what do we do when we don't hear anything from the other side? And that's the crickets thing. So, Justin, do you want to jump in on this one and try to wrestle the communication gorilla a little bit here?
Yeah, no, I think definitely being very upfront and honest about communication options and expectations is a great way to start. We occasionally have clients and planners we work with that are very communicative, and they really want and are very responsive, which is great. We have some that are less so, but it's just so much easier if that person on the front end just says something like, hey, I'm really busy, I'm managing a lot of programs now, my response times are going to be delayed, I'm not ignoring you, and or if they provide their best method, just to say, hey, I don't have time for phone calls, I respond much better on email, and then that way just everyone kind of understands that preferred method and the best way to communicate, and has a clear understanding of how that process is going to work, and it just works so much more smoothly that way.
My experience is unequivocally, and I'm passing on the information, so don't kill the messenger here, customers constantly tell me and in forums that the percentage of salespeople that ask what is the best way that we should communicate with each other is in such a small percentage, it's not even worth, less than 5% is usually what I hear of salespeople that ask about that methodology of communication. So there's some improvement that can be done in that area. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely, and it it is on, I think, the salesperson a lot of times to be proactive and ask that question. Say, hey, we're excited for the opportunity. We're interested in working with you. Help me understand the best way to work with you, and how should I communicate with you?
Tracy, did you ever hear crickets in your bureau days? I know that many CVBs and DMOs that I work with, sometimes the issue isn't so much with the customers, with the bureau person, and I want to get back to the credibility thing again. But their credibility is often on the line because they don't hear back from their hotels, or the hotels don't ask the proper questions. And sometimes the communication between the CVB / DMO and the hotels isn't that great. So I'm taking the customer out of this part of the question and saying, oftentimes, is this the old we've seen the enemy and the enemy is us?
Absolutely. And Justin, I'm sure you experienced that. But I think, again, it goes back to, we're talking about sides, and it's like, how can we get everybody on the same page to understand it? It's not like we're trying to trick each other, like, I'm going to send Justin a lead, and then I'm going to wait to see if he asks me the best way I want him to communicate.
Right.
Why don't I just tell him that right up front? So if we're all talking and not trying to stump each other, but trying to share as much as we can with each other, a lot of this goes away. It seems so basic, but we're pointing fingers a lot.
Did you ever get an instance where a customer was kind of poking and prodding to get the responses back, and you had to literally chew your knuckles because you weren't getting responses back from the hotels like you had put out there, and you were thinking it might cost you the bid?
It did cost a bid sometimes. I mean, from my experience, Justin, I don't know if you've seen it too, but it sure does. And it's if they don't respond, and your hands are tied, and it's very frustrating.
Right.
No, I think that's kind of that.
To interject and say we have about 10 minutes left.
Okay, thank you, Camille. Go ahead, Justin.
Oh, just real quickly. No, I think that's definitely going back to that idea of it being a team effort, I mean, I think that, everyone has a role to play, and I think if we're all viewing it in that way, it does work better because, sometimes hotels can be slow on responding, and honestly, if that's, I think one of the big value adds working with a DMO or a bureau can provide a planner is, we genuinely want to help you find the best fit for your program, so we'll help you and work with you with those hotels and say, hey, we need to get a proposal, let's, get this done together, and we can definitely be a helpful part of that process.
Right. And I guess one of the worst parts of this is what we all kind of fear with all kinds of communication, whether we're in sales or event planning or whatever, is crickets. Nobody ever likes to hear crickets. And there, again, no one size fits all on that remedy. I don't have any magic beans for the group today about how do you make that go away all the time. But I am on the side of Tracy here in terms of saying, you've got to make maybe the first step and try to reach that person rather than waiting for them to reach you. Life just doesn't work that way. If you wait for other people to get back to you all the time, I think you're going to be sorely disappointed, more than a few times.
Gary, I think, too, we'd be remiss if we did not mention technology in all of this.
Yeah.
We saw firsthand when we were having some struggles getting started today.
Yes.
And, how many times do we send an email and it goes into somebody's spam? And You're angry because they're not responding to you, but they never saw it, or they say they never saw it and you think they did. Or, I had a hotel recently, I was like, I know they want to bid on this and I don't know why they're not answering me. So I shot them a quick email and they were having issues with CVent and couldn't respond. And so I was glad I checked with them, but on the other hand, why didn't they say to me, I'm missing the deadline because I'm having problems with CVent. Can you wait or do you have to move forward?
That seems like it would have been a very professional thing to do, but it also seems a little bit like a no-brainer. Like if I do have this problem, you're not a mind reader. I got to call and let you know I'm having this problem.
Right, and we all have days where we get busy and you're remiss and you think, I should have called and I just got busy and didn't. So sometimes give up other people the benefit of the doubt. You're having a busy day and you just forgot a little detail. And help them out. Again, it goes back to that two-way communication.
Right. Yeah. Nobody wants to get into the blame game in that point of view. Just own up to it and say, hey, we had a problem, we fixed it, or we're fixing it, and on to the next thing. But the blame game doesn't help.
We have some feedback too.
Okay.
Dana says there is a lot of shift in hotel personnel, and I find in many cases there's no bounce back from the email, and then you're left not realizing the person isn't there any longer.
That is a great point. I could do a whole webinar on that topic alone. So whoever that sender is, thank them for their point. That is a great point. I have had customers tell me that they want to chew their own knuckles off when they have an event coming up. It's booked, and they haven't even been told that their salesperson or their conference service person has left yet. That's unforgivable. In my opinion, hotel folks out there, that is an unforgivable sin. I don't know how the two of you guys feel about it, but I'm solid on that one.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, in most markets there is typically a lot of movement in the hotel world. Sales managers move different hotels, and event and banquet managers move, and it's that idea of always striving to provide the best communication and service possible, and keeping your client informed, especially if it's a book piece of business, because that does happen sometimes where a client has a great relationship with a sales manager, they book a program and everything is going wonderful, but then 6 months out from the program, or as Gary suggested, sometimes on the day of the program when someone shows up, there's a different team there, and maybe they haven't been informed of all the conversations, and it can really set things off to a bad start.
There should be my fix is simply said, but probably a little more difficultly done. But it shouldn't be. There are tools in place. There should be a protocol and it would be on my team. Anytime one of our team members leaves, that we have someone going into their work and pulling all their clients coming up and getting in contact with them as soon as possible. So that should be a protocol that happens like washing your hands before you eat. I mean, someone leaves, we go in, we pull their clients, we pull their groups coming up, and we start with the most recent coming in, and we work backwards, and we go, and we get them to let them know who is it. That to me is an unforgivable sin in the hotel business. I don't know why that doesn't happen, but it can sure bog things down. Thank you for your comment, though. That's a great one. The third slide and the third component that I wanted to break the RFP process down and offer some helpful tools for the folks today is the being easy to do business with. And I guess this entire webinar, a subtitle should be being easy to do business with, because that's really what we're trying to do here, correct? So in the area of responses and next steps, this is where it really gets a little dicey, because there's no one size that fits all. So we have formats that differ. Not all RFP forms were created equal. So salespeople do have to kind of reinvent the wheel sometimes, because company A, third party B, resource C all sends their RFPs in different formats, and that takes a lot of work to send those out when they're in different formats. So that could bog the process down. Revenue management response, I do want to get your guys thinking about that. I'll come back to that, because so many times today salespeople can't make a move without revenue management approving it, and that can really bog things down. I've heard stories like, well, they're not here this week, or they have to get approval from the GM, and he's away at a 3-day conference, or she's attending a convention, and so all the decisions come to a screeching halt. Meanwhile, the customer's saying, I'm pulling my hair out because I've got to know this, and I can't wait for them to get back. All kinds of things there. The other thing about the next step is, and I think this is a dilemma that many salespeople face, do I come in with my best deal first, or do I just get in the game? Do I just get their attention, come in with a deal that maybe I can have a little wiggle room on rate or concessions, or do I absolutely have to come in with my best deal first, because I may not get a second chance? I may not get the second base. I won't make that first cut. That's a tough dilemma, and I don't think there's magic beans for that one either, but that's a tough dilemma. And the last one is, how do I stand out from the rest of the crowd? I had this on an earlier slide, but I have a super-duper property, or I have a wonderful facility, or a terrific destination, and there's just some things that don't fit on your spreadsheet that I need to tell you about. And so how do I pull out of the crowd and say, hey, we've got the eighth wonder of the world here, but it's not fitting on this Excel spreadsheet RFP kind of form thing. So I just threw a lot at you guys. I know we have a limited amount of time, but I would like to get your thoughts on these bullet points as we get to the end here.
Justin, you want me to go first?
Yeah, sure. No, I think those are very true, and I think, I'm particularly kind of what you said about revenue management and best deals first. I think in that spirit of working as a team to find the best fit for the client, helping in the RFP, helping the hotel clearly understand the opportunity and the value to them, so that sales manager has the ammunition and context to go into their revenue manager and argue for your program. That definitely helps.
We could do a whole other program. We might do a program down the road. I'll ask Camille, but revenue management is its own thing. They have entire conferences about it now. So it's not a perfect process, is it?
And I think that relates to putting their best deal first. I think many markets, ours included, has fairly high demand, and I more and more am seeing that hotels that don't put a really good competitive offer in on the first proposal oftentimes don't get the chance to come back and try again. So no, I would definitely encourage suppliers, put the best deal in that you're comfortable with, and start with that.
Okay, excellent advice. Tracy,
Yeah.
what turns you on about this slide here?
Are you talking to me, Gary, or?
Yeah. What hits you hard on this slide here?
Well, a couple of different points. I definitely agree with Justin. I don't want to go back and forth. If I've given you, as the planner, I've given you my hot buttons and told you what I need to be interested in your property, then just give me the answers to those. And the format of all proposals are so different. If you've got a standard format, then at least somewhere in there, give me the bullet points to answer my questions, so I don't have to search through, 10 to 12 pages of information to find that, because that's time consuming. And as a planner, if we get 10 responses, that's going to take hours to sort through.
Right.
And I think the more we have to go back and forth with continued negotiations, the more time consuming and also costly it is for all of us. Time is money. And if we spend days and weeks going back and forth, it's costing us all money. So
Tracy, to your point, I had a customer say that she sent out an RFP that should have taken 2 pages of an email, two-page document, and the hotel sent back 25 pages, and literally it was all attachments of things they never even asked for nor wanted, including a page-by-page review of their website. So she said, what did they think I couldn't do, go on the website myself? And she said, I didn't have time to sift through all that. So she said, I threw that proposal out of hand. I just threw it out of hand. It was too much, and I couldn't take the time to siphon through all that stuff. They didn't listen to me. I tried to make it easy for them, and they made it difficult. So maybe that's another lesson from this webinar is let's not make this difficult process, guys, more difficult than we're asked to make it. I mean, it's hard enough. Don't make it harder.
Right, and I think, too, from a destination or hotel perspective, again, I think I mentioned it earlier, we all have, every city, every destination, every hotel has certain things that are the same as everybody else's. And what I always thought would make our destination or, my services to my clients more unique is the customer service aspect. I mean, I can overlook the fact that maybe your hotel isn't brand new or doesn't have quite the exact meeting space I need if I know when I book with you I'm going to get the customer service that I need and that you're going to be on my team to help me make my event successful and make my attendees happy. That, to me, is what I want to hear more than, I've got, the best pool or the best, parking situation. I think it's the little things that make the difference.
And sometimes a challenge, Tracy, is getting those very important, but those touchy-feely extemporaneous things into an RFP. That's what makes it tough. You could be the best salesperson in your comp set, and how do you say that in the RFP, right? How do you jump off the thing, and that's what makes it tough. But it's so important, like you said, that it really could be the difference. I want to close with this last slide here, guys. It's been a terrific interchange with you, and I want to get you thinking to make your final comments. But here's two buddies here. They're both on an island. One has bananas, one has prunes. You can read the caption there, but they both have something that the other needs or wants. And I think, Tracy, maybe you're thinking about this with your comment about being on different sides, because obviously if they stay on their sides, too many bananas or too many prunes without the other is not a good thing. So the sides in this story really apply. They're going to have to find a way to cross that little channel of water and work it out so they can trade with each other what the other one wants. And I think that gives to empathy and understanding of the other side. This is a tough business. It is a gangbusters business. The lack of time makes everything on warp speed sometimes. The expectations on the hotel sides now to produce revenue and results, it's a black and white kind of business. Sometimes the destinations have to perform. Justin, you guys have very tough bosses in all your GMs that expect you guys to keep their hotels full. So everybody's got a lot of pressure. The event planners, many of them, third parties, whether they're third parties or event planners that have had their meeting staffs cut. Who's got the time anymore? So I think with empathy and understanding, my little close here is let's work with each other and figure this thing out. And I'll go back to the more we tell each other and share with each other, the easier this will go. And so I started the seminar by saying RFP shouldn't have to mean or doesn't have to mean really frustrating process. And what I mean by that is it doesn't have to mean that. And what I think it can mean, if we work together, is RFP can stand for remarkably functioning partnerships. So my closing thought is to leave everybody with that RFP, that we come out of this thing at the end with a remarkably functioning partnership. What do the two of you guys think of that idea?
I like it.
I think it absolutely makes sense, and it's a win-win for everybody.
And thank you very much. Camille, do we have time for another question, or probably not, huh?
We have to answer one quick question.
Okay.
Kate wants to know, can you all share via email one or two examples of a good RFP?
I think we could do that off line here if we get her email, and then we can send it to you, Camille. Are you guys in for that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can get her email and I'll send it to you guys
okay.
So she can get it.
All right. Thank you very much. Any closing comments you would like to add, Tracy or Justin?
No, but just thank you so much for giving us your time. I hope you found this productive and helpful.
Yes, I agree, and I think, just the more we communicate with each other and talk about these issues, the better we all get.
And I, too, would like to thank you guys. An hour or so out of your time, you probably had 10 or 12 RFPs filling your inbox as we spoke. Hopefully, we've shared information with you and ideas and tools that will make you better equipped to deal with those RFPs that just came into your inbox than you would have an hour and a half ago. And that's my mission, that we kind of moved you along so many inches along the line to give you more tools and to make this a better process and not have it seem so daunting, that we really can fix this stuff, and it's up to us to do it. Everybody's got to pitch in and do it together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Camille?
And I would like to thank Gary, Tracy, and Justin so much for their time and their expertise on explaining the RFP process for everyone, and thank the audience for bearing with us during those technical difficulties in the beginning. And if you would like to have a copy of the handout of the presentation, you will notice several widgets at the bottom of your screen. The one with the paper is the one where you can download the handout. And after this webinar concludes, you will be directed to a short survey about 5 questions. It would be great if you guys could fill that out so we can get some feedback. And you can learn about Connect's past and upcoming webinars on all of our websites listed on your screen now. And for everyone joining us live today, the credit was approved for 1 credit hour towards CMTIS Domain B Project Management. We will send your certificate tomorrow evening. Again, if you're watching on demand, please email me for your certificate. It will not come to you automatically. If you have any questions, please reach me at my email, cmoore@connectmeetings.com, which I am typing for everyone right now. And we hope that you all will join us again on August 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for an informative session on room block poaching with speaker Michael Owen. And thank you, everyone, again, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.